When you look at your life and see a graveyard of half-finished projects, a guitar gathering dust in the corner, a half-coated website, baking tools you barely remember buying, and a sudden obsession with learning jiu-jitsu, probably feel a very specific kind of shame. There's a label society loves to use for people like you. They call you a dilettante. They say you're chaotic, unfocused, or that you lack the grit to commit to one path. You start to feel like an imposter because you can't seem to choose a single lane and stay there. You probably know the phrase, jack of all trades, master of none. And you might use it as a weapon against yourself. But what you forget is the rest of the sentence. The full quote is, a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. Psychology suggests that this feeling of being scattered isn't a flaw. It's a signal. It's the mark of a highly adaptive nervous system. You aren't failing to specialize. You are unconsciously building a rare cognitive structure known as the M-shaped mind. While the world tells you to focus, your brain is preparing you for a future where extreme specialization is no longer an advantage, it's a liability. To understand why this inner chaos may actually be a survival strategy, we need to examine the lie you were sold. For most of the last century, success was shaped like an eye. The system rewarded people who dug one hole, straight down, for a lifetime. It was a kind learning environment like golf where the rules never changed. Practice the same swing for 10,000 hours, and you win. But you don't live in a kind environment. Your brain knows this instinctively. The modern world is what psychologists call a wicked environment. The rules change constantly. Entire industries rise and collapse in a decade. In a wicked environment, the specialist is fragile. When the system shifts, they become obsolete. Because of this, you drift. One year you're obsessed with electrical wiring and HVAC systems. The next year you're deep into yoga, heavy lifting, and DJing late-night electronic music. To an outsider, this looks like chaos. They might say you're unfocused, scattered, or strange. But that's not what's happening. What you're actually doing is collecting data from completely different domains. And this is where something powerful begins. Psychology calls it far transfer. Specialists rely on near transfer. They solve new problems using tools they've already mastered in familiar situations. But you work differently. You take ideas from one unrelated field and apply them to another. Imagine a web developer who used to be a beekeeper and a farmer. On paper, those experiences have nothing to do with code, but that agricultural background gives them an intuitive understanding of organic systems, feedback loops, and growth cycles that a screen-only specialist could never replicate. They aren't just writing software. They're cultivating an ecosystem. That's far transfer. That's innovation. You feel like an imposter because you aren't the best at any one thing, but you're missing the truth. Your value ISNT in depth alone it. Essence synthesis. Realizing that your curiosity is a strength can feel relieving, but it doesn't immediately solve the heavier problem, the burnout, the anxiety, the sense that you're falling behind. You watch people your age becoming senior executives, lead engineers, or established experts, while you feel like you're still at the starting line because you keep changing direction. This happens because you misunderstand the geometry of your own potential. You aren't T-shaped. Broad knowledge with one deep specialty. You're M-shaped. An M-shaped person builds multiple pillars of depth, connected by a bridge of curiosity. But here's the danger. You cannot build all the pillars at once. If you try to learn data science, write a novel, and launch a business in the same month, you will collapse. Those who thrive with this kind of mind practice what psychologists call serial mastery. They live in seasons. You might spend your 20s immersed in music and art. In your 30s, you pivot into programming to stabilize your income. You didn't abandon art, you completed a season of construction. There's a story of a man in his early 50s who finally made peace with this. He realized he didn't have to choose between programming and art. Programming became the pillar that paid the bills. Music, philosophy, and game design became the other pillars, nurtured during nights and weekends. He turned down high-pressure leadership roles to keep his work week short. He protected his mental energy. He didn't force everything to merge at once. He allowed his interests to unfold sequentially. Over time, they naturally converged into deeply personal, creative projects. That is the M-shaped mind in motion. There's one final trait that makes people like you remarkably resilient, and it comes straight from evolutionary biology. It's called redundancy. In nature, redundancy isn't waste, it's protection. Elephants, for example, rarely develop cancer because they carry multiple copies of the same tumor-suppressing genes. If one fails, another activates. Your many interests work the same way. If you're only a specialist software engineer and automation replaces your role, fear takes over. But if you're a software engineer who can also rewire a building, repair HVAC systems, teach language skills, or adapt creatively, you're not fragile. You're durable. You weren't wasting time experimenting. You were practicing strategic adaptability. You were building a safety net of skills that ensures no matter how the economy shifts, how technology evolves, or how the job market breaks, you always have another move. So stop apologizing for your graveyard of hobbies. They weren't failures. They were semesters in a university you built for yourself. You were never meant to be just one thing. You were designed to connect worlds that others can't even see.